Okay, here's our image, and we can see we've got a problem. It's a greenish cast. It's sometimes quite difficult to tell exactly what's wrong with the picture, but if you're not sure and you want to sort of give some guidelines to work on, try this one. Image, adjust, hue and saturation, and just push the saturation up. It will falsely color the picture, but bear in mind that what's really happening is it's taking the colors that it sees on screen, the ones that were represented here in the center, and it's pushing them out to the maximum value. So we find that around the hair edges here, the hair is beginning to turn green, and the whole thing has quite a strong greenish cast to it, and that's where we're going to start. So I can cancel that. We don't need that. That was just to find out what the problem was and give us a clue. You could argue perhaps that with the one we're going to use it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Image, adjust, variations. This is just so easy. Not so easy to fit it on the screen. It's a bit tight in the fitting here, but nevertheless we'll manage with it as it is. How does this all work? Well, in essence, we have an original picture here, and this picture doesn't change. It's going to stay like this until I click the OK button, and then whatever I've done will be applied to this image that's still out on the screen. So this one remains constant. The current pic alongside is the current picture. At this moment, of course, it's exactly the same as the original. There is no difference at all here because as yet we haven't made any changes. But as soon as I start to make a change, any change at all, the current picture will change. And this leaves us as a point of reference all the time. We can look at this, the original that we opened with, and we can look at the one alongside, and we can decide whether we've improved upon it or not. It just saves you having to go back to the image on screen all the time. Down below that we have the large color area. This whole box here has these images arranged around the center image, which is again the current pic. You see, the current picture, the current state of play is here. It's also down here in the middle of the colors, and it's again over here in the middle of the lightness and darkness. So in this case, we're being offered the opportunity of bringing one of these other colored images into the center and making that the current pic. Come back to that in a moment. On the right hand side here, this other box is the tonal changes. The middle one is the average, if you like, the one that we have now, and here's the opportunity to make it lighter or darker. Now the changes are quite subtle at this moment in time, so what I'm going to do is come to this control, the fine coarse control, because here we can emphasize the changes. Every time I move this, the differences between the current pic, the center picture, and the ones around the outside or above and below here become greater. See that? And if I move it to the coarse setting, we get enormous changes. Here's the one that we started with, but here's one that is vastly lighter than that, and here's one that's so dark we can barely see it. The same with the colors. The colors are all wildly emphasized. Here's the start point then. Leave show clipping switched on. This will show us if anything goes out of gamut. In other words, if pixels start to appear that cannot be printed. It won't actually show us anything in the midtones. It works only with shadows and highlights, and not with the midtones one. And we're going to be on midtones mainly, because this is going to have a greater effect upon the grey midtones of the image than upon the extremes. That's where we see color changes most. So I'm going to wind this down to a state where we can see what's going on. I want you to be able to see the differences here, but not so exaggerated that they become silly. Let's leave it on that. It's a little more extreme than I would normally use, but it's just so that you can see that there are positive differences between all these pictures. We'll work on the lightness and darkness first. If we were to do the colors first and then decide to make it darker or lighter, the colors would change, and that wouldn't do. That's not the way to go about it. First of all, sort out the lightness. I'm going to click here. And what happened then was that everything interacted. The image that was here moved down to the center, below it the current pic, and the one that was there moved on down below that again. And this was reflected by making all of the images to our left lighter as well, and there's the result. Here's our current pic now, this image that's repeated in these three places, but alongside it is the original, which was darker. Just to prove that what I said is right, if we go back to the darker one, we would expect them all to shuffle back to where they were. So I click on the darker one, it moves to the current pick, and the lighter one moves up again. And you can now see that both of these images are back to being the same. So it's as simple as that. You click on the image you prefer. Now, that's too much. That's too extreme. I'm going to come down now. And even if you can't see it too clearly on my screen, you will be able to see it on your own. I'm going to make it just a trifle lighter. I'm just going to click on there, and that redraws the middle one and makes all of these lighter as well. And we've made our first move towards correcting the color in this image. Here's the slightly more difficult one then. We now move across to the color area, and really we don't need these labels. Use the labels and you invite confusion, because what is magenta and what is a magenta cast or a green cast or a cyan cast? Much better, I think, to have a good view of these on your screen, and your screen representation should be larger than the one I'm looking at here, and you simply look at the surrounding pictures and you say to yourself, is this picture better than that one? Or is this picture better than that one? And if you decide it is, then you click on it. And I think this green image that we realized when we looked at the saturation earlier would be better if we added some magenta to it. So I'm going to come down to the magenta image and I'm going to click once, as I did over here for the lightness. Click now and everything changes. Now this time slightly differently. There's no simple up and down here. The magenta image went across to here, and the image that was the current pick, the original one, moved up to here. So the whole thing is moving from this bottom right hand end up to the top left, and all of the colors are redrawing accordingly. Now there's a problem, and the problem as I see it with this box is not that it doesn't work. It works extremely well, but it is the size of the image. The images are very small, and unfortunately the preview doesn't reflect itself in this image out here. This is still the image we started with, the original. So in order to find out what we've done in detail, I need to click OK. And as soon as I do, the changes take place. Now I'm going to do Control Z on the keyboard. See that? The before, the greenish cast, and the after, the reddish cast. Have we gone far enough? Well, the easiest way to find that out is to take a part of your image. Not the whole thing, but just a part of it. I'm going to come back from there to there and pick up the marquee select tool, and I'm going to select just that piece. Now what's special about that? Well, really very little. But if I could get the colors right in there, then I have virtually all the colors in there that are contained within the whole picture. So if I can get these right, the rest of them will be right anyway. And if I go back now to Image, Adjust, Variations, see what's happened. We're now looking at just a small part of our image, and because of that we can make more refined adjustments. I'm going to move from coarse down to here, almost to the fine end. At the finest end you can hardly see a difference between these at all on this screen, but if I go down to here you might just see a difference. And now I can make my final decision, and I'm going to add just a trifle more red in there, I think. If I decide it needs even more red, just click it again, and when you're comfortable and happy with the result, then you can save it. Now if I were to save it now, if I were to click OK now, of course that will only apply in this center area. That's no good. So what you need to do is go Image, Adjust, Variations, make the changes that you're going to make, and then save those changes. Very simple to do. You decide on a file to put them into, wherever that happens to be on your system. I'm just going to put them into a temporary file for now, there somewhere, and you name them. Just call it one. It doesn't matter what I actually put on here for now. You can make your own names. And it's being saved as an AVA file. I click Save. Now I know that that is the right setting for the center piece. Having found that out, I simply undo it, get rid of my selection, go back into the box for one final time, Image, Adjust, Variations, and this time, because we saved it, we can load it. There it is, File 1 AVA, because I hadn't moved. I'd have to find it if I'd put it somewhere else. Click on it, and click open, and automatically the settings that I made for the smaller selection will now be applied to the whole image, and we end up with a much more highly colored picture. Now, it's difficult on a small screen like this to show you what it will look like in reality, but those are the principles involved. If you go through that process, you will end up with a perfectly colored image just by looking at it. You don't need to know anything about color. Okay, what about the other one? Well, to find out about that, I'm going to go back a little while. We're going to open the history palette, and I'm going to go right back to the original picture, which, as you know, was a greenish color. Okay, we're back to the start. Under Image, Adjust, we have the other color tool that we've used in the step by step in the article this month, which is Color Balance. This perhaps is a little more complex because it does involve some understanding of how color works. Think about the color wheel that you saw in the article and you'll know what you have to do here. We simply pull the slider the way we want it to go. So if I pull it that way, then I am increasing the amount of cyan in the image. But if I go the other way, I'm increasing the amount of red. No more difficult than that. We have a controller down here that allows us to put the emphasis either into the shadow areas or into the highlight areas, or more normally, again, into the mid-tone areas. But do make sure that you leave this checked. This ensures that no matter what we do with these, we still end up with a picture that looks normally exposed, the way it was at the start. If I were to switch that off, look what happens to the picture. It goes very, very dark. Leave that on at all times, and just pull these levers to where you want them to be. Now, we determined right at the start that the chances were that we have a problem here with green. And we did that using Image Adjust, and we pulled the saturation. If the problem is green, then we need to move away from the green. So by pulling this lever this way, we'll find that the green moves out of the image and magenta comes in. And it's up to you to look at the preview image, which does now change, keep this checked, and just see what you like. I like it like that, but perhaps with a little bit of red as well, because these work together, you see. We can pull not one lever, but all of them if we wish. And when you're happy with the result that you're looking for, then you simply click OK, and that becomes the changed image. I'm just going to undo it. There we go, there's the green version, and undo it again. There's the version which we've come out with as a result of using color balance. Those are just two of the ways of changing color within Photoshop. There are many more. But what I like about both of these methods is their simplicity. It's a visual thing. Try it and you can get the result that you want. And that's what's important.